Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brenda and I'm a speech language pathologist. On this channel, we talk all things speech and language. So if you have a little one or you're a speech therapist, make sure you subscribe to my channel. On this video, we're going to be talking about Lisp. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks that I use with my clients that can help you out at home if you have a child that Lisp, or if you're a speech therapist, you can use these tips and tricks with your clients. So there are 4 different types of Lisp. We have the interdental lisp, which is when the tongue goes in between the teeth, and instead of sounding like sit, it would sound like fit, like the TH. Then we have the lateral lisp, which is that the air escapes through the sides of the tongue, and instead of sounding like sit, it would sound like shit. Then we have the dentalized lisp, which is when the tongue hits the teeth while producing S or Z. And then we have the palatalized lisp, which is when the middle of the tongue hits the soft palate on the top of the mouth. If your child has a lisp and is younger than 4 years old, I wouldn't stress it too much. Typically, I don't treat a child for a lisp until they're at least 4 or 4.5 years old. If your child is older than 4.5 years old, then keep in mind that a lisp is a bad habit. So the sooner you treat it, the better. Also, if they have a lateral or a palatal lisp, they are less likely to outgrow it. So the first thing I do with a child who has a lisp is, after I've assessed the type of lisp that they have, is that I teach them the correct production of S. So I'll tell them big smile, close the teeth. Then I'll tell them that the tip of their tongue goes up on the bumpy part of their mouth on the top. And then I will remind them to blow down the middle. And then I'll refer to the tongue as a snake and the teeth as a cage. And I'll tell them the snake can't come out of the cage. And then I'll tell them to blow out and produce the S. And so we will do that over and over and over again until they get the correct production of S in isolation, which means the S on its own. So I will not move on until they get S correctly. So the first trick that I use for teaching the S is called the pop tire, or at least I named it that. Basically what this trick consists of is producing 4 T's followed by an S. So the T is produced just like the S. The teeth are the same, the tongue is the same. The only difference is that when you produce the T, there's a stop in airflow. And when you produce the S, there's a continuation of airflow. So for example, t, there's a stop in the airflow. Tss, it's a continuation of airflow. So I'll tell them, we're going to make the sound of a pop tire. 4 T's followed by a big explosion. Ready? And this will kind of trick the brain into producing a correct S. This trick is great for kids who have a lateral lisp because it'll help them redirect the air from the sides of the tongue towards the center. Once the child has mastered this trick, then we can move on to words that end in T and S. For example, like bats, hats, cats. We'll do them at word level, so just saying the word alone. Then we'll move on to phrase level, like we can say, I wear hat. Then we can move on to sentence level, where you make it a little longer. I like the blue hat in that store. And then into conversation level. Another great trick for a child who has a lateral lisp is using a straw. If you place the straw in front of the teeth and they have a lateral lisp, they will not feel or hear the airflow coming down the straw. So it'll sound like this. This will help them redirect the air down the straw. So just tell them to blow down the straw. They can feel and hear the air traveling if they're doing it correctly. So that will give them some positive reinforcement for producing a S correctly. When treating a child with a lateral lisp, I'll also use hand cues to help them redirect their airflow. So for example, if I hear airflow coming out through the sides of the tongue, I'll kind of put my fingers out like this to cue the child that the air is coming out through the sides of the tongue. And then I'll bring my fingers in together to cue them to redirect their airflow down the middle of the mouth. So when working with a child with an interdental lisp, I like to start with words with S in initial position. This just means that the word starts with the letter S. I also like to use coarticulation, which means using sounds that are produced in the same area of the mouth. So for example, S is produced in the alveolar ridge area, which is the bumpy part of your mouth on the top. So are N and T. So when you use words like snake, steak, and stir, the N and the T will influence the production of the S and make it easier for the child to produce the S correctly. So if you're working with the S sound at home with your child, make sure you're using the actual S sound. For example, sometimes the S sound actually makes the Z sound, like in the word cheese. cheese is spelled with the S at the end, but it actually makes the Z sound. So make sure you're using the correct S sound. Also, another great tip is to use a mirror. If you use a mirror, the child is able to see that they're producing the S correctly, that their tongue is not coming out, and they can give themselves feedback. While practicing your sounds with your child, make it fun. Do it while you're playing Legos, or maybe make a snake with Play-Doh. Keep them engaged and motivated. If they make the correct production for S, make it a big deal. Celebrate. Keep them motivated to keep trying. Like I said in the beginning of this video, a lisp is a bad habit. So it's going to take a lot of practice and a lot of muscle memory, but have lots of patience and be persistent. Practice every day, 3 to 5 times a day, short spans of 5 minutes, and just have a lot of fun doing it. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helped you and answered your questions. If you still have any questions, please let me know down below in the comments. I'd love to answer them. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do and hit the bell notifications. I'll see y'all next week.